So thank you very much, Billy, Sabine, and Lucian, who is not here, for inviting me to talk a bit about this topic that is present in our work every day, in our lives, and that usually we don't take advantage of the potential of this tool, which we always carry with us everywhere. Decía que muchas gracias, Sabine, Viri, Lucian, que no está aquí, por invitarme a hablar sobre este tema. Es muy interesante que día a día está en nuestro trabajo, en nuestras vidas, y que muchas veces no aprovechamos el potencial que puede tener esa herramienta que siempre llevamos con nosotros a todas partes. Okay, first of all, I don't know why I put that image here if the idea is to talk about the cell phones, but whatever, in the end, it's photography. What I'm going to talk about today is not about a photography course, of course, but about some tips, some recommendations between hundreds that are out there, and how to use our cell phone to take good pictures in our personal life or for our work. Ok, bueno, estaba diciendo que no sé por qué puse esta imagen aquí si la idea es hablar de celulares, pero bueno, al final es fotografía. Lo que voy a hablar hoy no se trata de un curso de fotografía como tal, sino de algunos tips, algunas recomendaciones, entre cientos que hay por allí de cómo usar nuestro celular para tomar buenas fotografías, tanto en nuestra vida personal o para nuestro trabajo. Okay, here are several interesting things come out. One of them is that photography is not simply pressing a button. Yes, we are going to have an image, but whether this image is enjoyable or useful is something different, right? On the other hand, the camera, the device, the machine doesn't take the picture. I mean, many people say, wow, what a good camera you have. It must take very good pictures. But I've seen people with the best camera taking horrible pictures. Let me see. Do you think it is necessary to do it in Spanish? Inés is telling me it's not necessary.
I think, Jaime, we're all English speakers here. I think we can just continue in English.
Okay.
Yes, you can do it.
Okay, thank you. So I am saying that I've seen people with the best camera taking horrible pictures, and therefore you don't need a professional camera to take professional photos. You can do it with your cell phone. So, and this is what I just say, that you have a huge camera, it doesn't mean that that your photos are going to be spectacular. You won't need this to take a good photo, right? Well, let's talk about some tips and recommendations for photography with mobiles or cell phones. We are going to talk about some of the most important ones only. Okay, first of all, some advantages and disadvantages of cell phone photography. First, a cell phone is compact in size compared to an interchangeable lens camera, of course. You always have your cell phone in your pocket. Modern cell phones perform excellently, especially in good light. They are easy to use, and they are always improving, right? Although this can be a disadvantage because every year there is a new version, version. And some limitations, they have a limited zoom capacity, although lately some cell phones are excellent at this, but digital zoom and not physical. And also we are not always going to need a large zoom power, except power with birding. And generally, cell phones cameras don't perform very well in low light conditions. Okay, so the first recommendation, and surely you have always heard it, is clean the lens of your cell phone. This takes just 5 seconds, and you can do it with practically anything, your clothes, a towel, etc. We always have the cell phone in our pocket on the table, and it is very likely that we touch the lens with our fingers, or that the lens gets dirty with almost anything. So, what are the consequences of a dirty lens? Let's see a couple of examples here. The image on the left was taken with a dirty cell phone lens, and the one on the right, the same image with a clean lens. You can easily see the difference in the image quality, right? Okay, another example, this time during the night. On the left, the photo with the dirty lens, and the right with the clean lens. Third, generates artifacts or unwanted effects in the image, reducing its quality. So the recommendation is clean the lens of your cell phone. In the end, doing this will become mechanical, and it is very easy to do it. Okay, the second recommendation, hold your cell phone tight to avoid any vibration. Take your cell phone with both hands, since when you press the shutter, we can generate movement that will reduce the quality of the image. It is not always necessary to touch the button on the screen. We can also use the side buttons to take the photo, and this can prevent the cell phone from moving. Here I have an example of an image blurred by movement when taking the photo. And on the right, one without not much vibration, achieving this way a sharper image. Another recommendation is be careful where you put your fingers when you're taking the photo. You may say that this is such an obvious recommendation, but it happens. And it's very easy to cover the lens of a cell phone, with a finger due to its reduced size, and therefore get it dirty. Here I have two examples of what we're talking about. This happens, and more often than you think. Also, people don't always review the photos they took in order to correct them, despite this being one of the biggest advantage of the digital photography these days. Please don't use the digital zoom. As we already talked about today early, there are very good cell phones with a very good zoom, but after all, it is a digital zoom. And the resolution of the photo will be reduced considerably. If you need to zoom in on the subject, and if you can, get closer, because a photo with a low resolution is difficult to correct after that. Okay, something that all cell phones have and that not many people use is to set the exposure and focus before taking the photo. Here, other concepts began to be mentioned, and which we will see them later. Simply by touching your subject on the screen of the cell phone, you tell the cell phone to focus on that area, right? And moving up or down your finger, you can adjust the brightness. That can be too much or too little. Exposing, exposing, sorry, in this way properly. Okay, here we have on the left an overexposed photo. I mean, with too much light or brightness, and on the right, an underexposed photo with too little light. Okay. Despite the fact that cell phones are very smart, you know that, and that they almost take the photo for us. There is a possibility that if a focus area is not specified, the photo will be out of focus. And please don't use filters. Today, there is an, let's say, in this criminate use of filters. For your personal artistics or family photos, it might be fine. But for a photo, for a technical report, for example, or for your work in general, this is not right. I've seen this several times. Often, we don't know the potential of our cell phone to take photos or videos. And due to this lack of knowledge of our phone, we do it with a low quality instead of using the highest resolution, for example, or we don't know the focus and exposure tools which could generate or warranty us a good photo, as well as aids that will facilitate the composition of the pictures, such grids or lines, which can be easily activated, or even different type of lenses, like the way in the modern cell phones. So the recommendation here is to explore a little the options and tools that your cell phone has. Okay, one of the main recommendation, very obvious, like all the others, but which is often ignored, is to define for what we are going to use the photos we are taking. And why is this important? Because if you are going to use it for a technical or informative report, for example, surely you should need to be more documentary, very detailed, for example, and have more context. And the composition here will not matter for sure, right? However, if you want to use your photos to share them on social networks or use them in a PowerPoint presentation, for example, you will want them to have a lot of impact to communicate story, for example, or you will want to add a text later in some part of the image. Therefore, here the composition, light, color, etc. These are going to be fundamental, right? Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the composition of the photos. Composition is simply where I place the elements and subjects of my photo with the framework of it, so that it has more or less impact or communicates a message with greater or less power, right? Of course, the management of light and colors also intervenes here. So what is the first thing I have to define? I have to first define a subject or center of interest. And why? Look at this photo here. A meeting, a group of people. Apparently, they are discussing something, right? But my eyes, your eyes, are everywhere, right? Over all the elements of the photo, trying to decipher what this photo wants to convey. It doesn't make much sense, right? So if for this same meeting, I change my perspective, my angle, and mainly composed differently and define a center of interest, a subject, my eyes are going to focus on that object. There are fewer also the distractions, and the message will be transmitted more easily. Here, this photo, for example, would tell us that the fire captain is talking about something important. Okay, one of the goals of the composition is to avoid boring photos, right? These types of photos, like this one I'm showing here, become so, let's say, every day without dynamics. And then this is boring. So don't be afraid to get closer to the subject or subjects. If possible, let's move to another place, take several photos, but from a different perspective. Don't do what people usually do, taking 2 or 3 photos exactly the same. Because 3 identical photos from the previous one won't make it any less boring. Let's try different angles. Our subject doesn't necessarily have to be in a boring center, right? Okay, let's take a look at this photo from in an important prepared event in past or several years ago. Just to see another factors. Here, there are very important people at this table, but some of them are almost asleep, right? Like the fireman on the left, or Juan Sandoval on the right, Diana Ubico, and someone from the municipality seems somewhat annoying, and Corey seems bored. And most importantly, no one is looking at the camera, right? So change your perspective. Avoid flat photos like the previous one. Attract the attention of your subject. Use different position of the people. Use colors, lines of the environments to generate dynamics, greater impact. This photo, this picture, here we can see a participant from a resin training course at the Prepare Faster program. Okay, one of the most common tools that we have at our disposal, let's say, is the rule of thirds. This rule simply divides the image into 3 columns and 3 rows, and tell us that if we place our subject or our area of interest at the intersection of these lines, our subject or area is going to have the greatest impact. So let's go back with this photo that I took in Pasto this year. Observe how I locate my subject in the lower right, yes, lower right intersection. So I can capture more of the observer's attention. Well, here I also play a bit with the depth of field with the blur. Now let's get back to this photo, this boring photo. What if I had applied some composition, sorry, to this photo? It wouldn't be so flat and boring, right? So that is the idea of the composition. Okay, here are some examples of the use of the rule of thirds. On the right, I wanted to highlight the logo of the firefighters. In the center, my little dog. I forgot to mention that at the beginning during the icebreaker. And on the right, I simply find this laptop a bit interesting. This is not the only rule, and of course, it can be broken when you think it is necessary. The recommendation here is be creative. Use the environment and the element to your advantage. If you can move them, use the contrast and colors to get what you want. Okay. Well, we cannot talk about many other roles and recommendations because it would take a long time. So now let's talk about some basic photo editing tips that many people don't take into account and which can greatly, let's say, improve the quality of the picture of your photos. First of all, I recommend that you use the editing tools on your cell phones. These tools are very powerful and enough for a good editing. No specialized program or application need to enhance a photo. But of course, as I mentioned, you have to define for what you are going to use the photos you are taking. The first recommendation on this topic is to eliminate or remove the elements that we don't want from our photo. Cutting or cropping the image and adjusting the frame with the composition rule, using the composition rules. Here, for example, I remove the upper part that I'm not interested in, and that was diverting attention from this Miyamoto's card. When necessary, rotate the image to a suitable horizontal or vertical position. In this photo, you can see that it is not completely horizontal, so using the rotate option of the cell phone, and I'm showing here in the upper right part, the one specifically for iPhone, but it is exactly the same for other systems. So using this, I can rotate the image until it is completely horizontal, improving its quality. Okay, when the light conditions are not optimal, the exposure option can be used to improve the photo, right? This photo was taken in not very good light condition, but it could be improved using this tool. Likewise, the saturation of the colors can be improved and adjusted when we consider that it is not adequate. Here, for example, this image was enhanced to a more suitable color, close to the reality. But please, another recommendation, do not overdo the use of saturation or contrast. Many people tend to use it without measure, reducing the quality of the photo. Also, don't, let's say, indiscriminately use the option of the HDR or high density range, which in some cases is very useful, but its excessive use deteriorates the quality, the physical quality of the photo. Likewise, with the other options that are available, such contrast, warmth, black point, etc. Well, as I mentioned, I recommend the software or basic application of the system or your cell phone. But there are also applications that offer more advanced options and tools, but that must be used with care because many of them will damage the digital quality of the physical digital quality of the photo. Among these apps, the best known are Afterlife, VSCO, Prisma, Photoshop, Express, Lightroom, Photo Collage, and some of them are free and others are paid. Okay, that's what I wanted to show you today. I hope I have brought something new for some people and sparked some interest in exploring new things in this field for others. So thank you very much for your attention.